Okay, are we live? All right. Buffalo. Okay. Do-do-do-do-do. Anyone's wondering what I'm doing? I'm installing all the Gold Masters today. All the GMs. If I misled anyone who wanted iron work, hold on. I got you covered. See, I lost everybody instantly. Okay. Yes, Michael, you should. Absolutely. I would not touch my head without some sort of protection. Well, thanks, Mike. I'm still not convinced you're a real person. Zach and I think you're some kind of artificial intelligence. Which, I mean, if you are, you present surprisingly well yourself. So just, I don't want anyone to feel ripped off. I already had one complaint that had a blacksmithing thumbnail without any actual blacksmithing here. This is a ladle I made. And this is a tramble hook. You hang this over a fire. See these holes here? So you can adjust this hook. You hang your pot off this. That way you can adjust how high it is over the fire. Oh, I already showed that one. Oh, and this is my hot dog fork. You put a hot dog in there, hold it over fire. Make a lot of camping related stuff in my class. So just saying that y'all know how legit I am. Apparently, John Stokes, former big shot over at Ars Technica, is going to try to trick me into saying the name of a popular conspiracy theorist that is verboten to mention on YouTube in an attempt to get me kicked off, which also be pretty funny. If these streams go well, I may start selling supplements. So, you can get a Super Tidbits Vitality. Helps increase your iOS knowledge level. Only the best products. Yeah, you can say that. You can say that. We're going to expose the Android conspiracy. I do everyone a favor and not tear my shirt off for this stream, though. I've been losing weight, but, it's not going that well. Actually, I'm glad you're here, Michael, because I've been editing your article, so I'm just call you out on it here. It actually looks pretty good. I don't think we have to do too much editing on it. You got to establish your own brand of shirt loss, maybe burning them off. Well, I could make a tool for that. I could forge a tool for that. Like they got I don't know what you call them. They got these like things you use to unzip a deer, like a pair of pants. And it's like you have a little blade. It's like a letter opener, but for a deer. I can get one of those, just tear my shirt off. Michael says he is now running the Gold Master of iOS 12 on 3 iOS devices. I just have it on 1. I'm behind, but I have it on my iPhone 10. It seems to work fine. I don't think anything's changed much in the past few betas. If it has, it's been really subtle stuff. And just by the way, if for some reason you're hesitating on iOS 11, I've had some Tidbits readers say, "I'm not going to get iOS 12. I'm going to stick with iOS 11." That's just dumb. I mean, I'm just going to be honest. That's just dumb because iOS 12 is like the Snow Leopard release to iOS 11. I mean, just right out the gate. I mean, from beta 1. From beta 1, it was it was way faster. It gave a whole new lease on life to my iPhone 6, which I should probably get the battery replaced in it now because it could actually be a pretty good phone again. So yeah, I've been very pleased with this release. It's not super exciting in terms of new features, but in terms of performance, yeah. I mean, if your plan is to stick to iOS 11 and just skip iOS 12, I think you're crazy. Michael says I should make logo shares for removing logos from clothing when they politically offend. But see, the problem is then no one would have any clothes. And Walmart is bad enough to walk into as is without everyone being naked. Just I'm gonna start wearing Keds. I don't think Keds have any political affiliations. Yeah, Michael says so far iOS 12 has been very stable and makes my old iPad Air feel newish. Yeah, we've heard that consistently across the board. iOS 12, just all around a solid update. I haven't heard of any major problems with it. Um, I mean, even if you run, I mean, it goes back all the way to the iPhone 5S, which is pretty impressive. You know, was her name Lisa Jackson? Am I getting that right? Anyway, she was up on stage yesterday at the Apple event talking about how Apple is wanting to make it so you can keep your devices longer, which I think is interesting because they're very much incentivized to get you buying a new device at least every year. So that was kind of refreshing to hear. And based on what I've seen from iOS 12 and how much better it runs on older devices, I tend to believe it. I mean, you could get by with an iPhone 6 now, whereas on the an iOS 11, iPhone 6 was extremely painful. I mean, I was running one of the very late betas on my iPhone 6 as on my test device, and I booted it up. It took forever just to get iOS 11 installed because it was so slow. It was just very bad to use. Yeah. Michael says he's making emojis on his iPhone 10 and he's threatening to send them to me, which by all means do so. I've made a few. I can't remember, Michael, if you were on that FaceTime test call or not, but I did some emoji on that. Although, of course, Apple. Well, I mean, I guess you can still do emoji. You can use the different doohickeys on FaceTime now, but you can't do the 32-person call. Oh yeah, you're voice only. Michael says he gave a 6 Plus to a friend and thinks she'll be happy with iOS 12. Oh yeah, absolutely. If you or anyone you know is still on iOS 12, you're going to be extremely happy. I'm sorry. If you or anyone you know is still on iPhone 6 or, heaven forbid, a 5S, you're going to be extremely happy with iOS 12, I think. Unless Apple just really screws something up at the last minute, which it could always happen, right? That's always a thing. But so far, so good. I think Apple made the correct choice in deciding to go easy on features and to really focus on refining what's there. It really needed like a garbage collection release. These operating systems, pretty much any software over time, it just collects a lot of cruft and sooner or later you got to blow it away. And Apple's usually better at that than anybody, but they've kind of gone a while just adding stuff to iOS. Oh, I mean, they've been in this race with Android, and Android's always been a little more ahead on the feature front. But we're now getting to the point where smartphones are becoming very mature, and there's not this huge compulsion for features. I mean, look at yesterday. Just off the top of your head, how many new features were announced for the iPhone XSs? Not many. Just not many. Stereo recording. Some, I mean, performance is definitely better, but in terms of new features in these new phones, you're probably going to come away a little disappointed, which, it's the maturity of the platform at this point. Michael says not all parts are in place. Shortcuts is not included in the GM. And the Home app has yet to include the update to HomePod. Yeah, that probably won't come out to the release. My understanding on this HomePod update is that it was a very exclusive beta. It was limited only to people in Apple. And the reason it was leaked so much, though, was because apparently there's a lot of Apple retail employees got to test this thing out. It was sort of an interesting strategy there. I guess that gave them a broader range without, I don't know. I don't really understand their rationale behind it. I'd be curious to find out from somebody. Now, the Shortcuts app has been in beta all summer, and I was fortunate enough to get into that beta, and so I've been using it. I'll tell you this about Shortcuts, just straight up. I don't know if it'll come out Monday or not. I would guess it probably does, but if it doesn't, if you install the Workflow app now, if you add workflows to that app, you create workflows, those will get imported into Shortcuts. So you will be David is asking, is Shortcuts an app? It is indeed an app. It's not system level. You install it from the App Store, which I think is a smart decision because I think it would confuse a lot of people. It's definitely a power user thing. And my theory on this is I think Shortcuts will end up being an update to Workflow. So I think if you have the Workflow app, I think you'll end up, if you have auto updates turned on, I think you'll just look one day and you'll have the Shortcuts app. But you'd think they would announce it somehow. Yeah, so Michael brings up a good point. The system creates shortcuts you can include. And so this is where it's kind of confusing. So you have the Shortcuts app, and then you have Siri shortcuts. And the idea behind Siri shortcuts is it's in settings, Siri and search. There's a thing about Siri shortcuts, and it picks up on things you do often with your devices, and it lets you create your own Siri commands for that stuff. And I don't have a ton to say about it yet. My understanding is, based on Apple's promotions, is that it will be have a lot of third-party integration. So you can say, "Oh, hey Siri, buy me something from Starbucks," or whatever. Oops, I activated my phone there. But I haven't seen any of that yet, and it's kind of frustrating because it just sort of automatically generates these things. Like you can't, as far as I can tell, you can't actually create them yourself. Though I've seen some, it seems like you can in some of the videos I've seen, like you can tell Siri to create these things for you. So it's one of the few things in this iOS release. I'm gonna have to wait and see what the developers do with it before I can really say something interesting about it. Michael also said, I skipped this comment. Only the camera gets the big updates via Bionic A12, thus changing the f-stop after the fact as XR feature. Yes, although something I'm planning to write for Tidbits, actually I talked to Adam about this, I guess. There are apps that can already do that stuff. I mean, just like when whichever app it was, like I mean, just like Bokeh or Bokeh, however you pronounce it. Bokeh was already a thing in some iOS apps well before it became an official iPhone thing. Changing the depth of field and all that is something you accomplish via apps. So my current plan is to stick with my iPhone 10 for another year, pay it off, and have another test device hanging around. So I don't feel like I'm going to miss a lot on that front. Yes, that's terrible advice, Michael. I've done that before, and then I ended up wasting a lot of time. No, I'm sure he'll like the idea. I'll just get him on board with it. No, I've done that. I've just written articles like, here you go. Here's this article. And it's like, why did you write this? I don't want this. Although I've been a little freer on that lately. Sometimes I'll just tell him, like, I'm writing this because I mean, we've been doing this together for 5 years. So I usually know like what he will 100% say yes to. Like if there's like iOS update comes out on a day, and not like I'm not talking about the major ones, but like iOS like 12.1 or something. Yeah, if he's out running, I'll just start writing it because I mean, there's nowhere we're not covering that. No way. I got 2 people in here right now. Okay, is anyone getting any new products? Anyone getting the XS, the XR, the XS Max, the the Apple Watch Series 4? Just rolls off the tongue, Series 4. I'm curious. Part of me is tempted. But Michael's claiming he could be a bot. Michael, I'm not sure you could pass the Turing test on a good day. So I'm not sure I could tell. David Michael says he's thinking about the Series 4, currently on a Series 0. See, that's my situation. I'm on a Series 0, which is, I guess, technically obsolete, or at least it will be totally obsolete on Monday. But I haven't used mine for much. I mean, I know they've improved a lot, especially in the past couple of generations. In terms of speed, the Series 0 is very slow. My battery at this point is practically shot. Yeah, David Michael says he's tempted by the new phones, but he has an X. See, that's the thing. I think if you have the X or the 10, or I don't know, however you want to say it, I'm kind of leaning toward X at this point myself. But yeah, I mean, I'm on the iPhone upgrade program. I could just trade in for another iPhone, but I'm not just dying to. And so I'm thinking I could pay this one off, and then I'll have an extra phone around for testing purposes, and then I'll get another one in the upgrade program. Michael says he's going to upgrade his original Apple Watch to a Series 4x9 immediately. Yeah, that's probably smart too, because I'm sure there's going to be some discounts on them over the next year. David apparently his battery is good because he had to get so many replacement watches. So what happened, David? What happened to your watches? Did you break them, or did they just did they have structural defects? Back plate kept popping off. I've heard about that. It's like an issue with the glue. Do you suspect that something about your environment was causing that to happen? I mean, do you live near like the ocean or something? Generally, humidity when camping and or when was wearing a bunch of sunscreen. Now, see, sunscreen. Well, see, I was about to say I think sunscreen, some kind of sunscreen, can dissolve plastics, but I think that's DEET. That's the insect repellent. It's not the sunscreen. Although, I mean, if you did have, I know that sometimes they put DEET in sunscreen, so it could be possible. A lot of heat and me spending a lot of time outdoors. Yeah, I'm thinking, I mean, if you use DEET as an insect repellent, like you use the spray on stuff, it's because I know it can dissolve like nylon, it can dissolve parts of shoes and stuff. So it's possible that if you got a little bit of DEET in there, it could dissolve the glue. No DEET involved. Okay, well, there goes that theory. But that's interesting. I mean, humidity could do that too. Adhesives and moisture don't tend to mix very well. Now, I did hear about that in a series Zeros, or series Zero. Series. The series Zeros watches, I've heard some of that problem, but not on the newer ones. I guess they've got the kinks worked out. Michael, we'll give you a Glen for that. Give you a Glenning. So I'll give people a heads up as to what Tidbits is planning on iOS 12 articles. We have a few lined up for Monday. Michael has written an article about the new Apple Books or Books. We keep debating about what exactly it's called. I think the app is called Books and the service is called Apple Books, but I'm not so sure about that either. I think they've changed it from an earlier beta. Adam is writing about Do Not Disturb. Jeff Carlson is writing about the new Photos app. Well, it's not a new app per se, but the stuff in it, there's some new stuff in it. I'm writing about screen time, which you can also read about in the book. Somebody read something else. That's what we have so far. Wow. David, you're on your sixth Apple Watch. That's crazy. I mean, at least you gotten free batteries out of the deal. I mean, you think at this point they would just given you like a Series 1 or something just to. Yeah, I mean, my Series Zero has held up well. Michael says, check chapter 6, looking through the looking glass, in which the White Knight talks about his song, the name of the song, and what the song is called, which also applies to Apple Books. Yeah, Apple's got a weird thing about naming schemes. Like Adam and I had this problem yesterday. So in the picture, like it's like iPhone X little s and it's iPhone X little r, like capital X little r. But then if you copy that text, it's a lowercase r. I don't know how they're accomplishing this witchcraft, but it's almost like there's a lot of things Apple just doesn't want you to name. Something like Voldemort runs as a desk at Apple. And sorry for the Harry Potter reference, but for once I thought it was pretty appropriate. So yeah, David Michael says that's what happened with my laptops Pro, but no dice. It was a constant of new Series Zero watches. Yeah, I've had good luck with Apple laptops, except for my very first one, which was a PowerBook Lombard in 1999. The power connector kept going out on me. And I bought it from CompUSA. I had a good deal with that. I had like a 2-year replacement plan. I just kept taking my laptop to CompUSA, getting it fixed like every month. Kind of sucked for gas though. It was constantly broken. That power connector got just the least bit bent. It just didn't work. I was very happy when they announced MagSafe. I'm very sad it's gone too. Oh, the USB-C is a lot better than the terrible power adapters they're using before. So, folks, well, Michael, I know you're already on all the new stuff. David, are you going to upgrade? Are you going to update all your OSs right away, or are you going to wait a day or two? If the only problem, Michael, if the only problem you have with your Apple devices is your Newton doesn't charge, and that's pretty awesome. Let's see. This is my 4th Apple laptop. I had a Lombard PowerBook from 1999. That, as I mentioned, that one had problems. My next one was an iBook G4, and that thing was like a tank. I mean, I literally stood on it accidentally at one point, and I mean, eventually the battery gave out and it started to swell and it messed with the trackpad button. But I had it like 4 or 5 years and just was very harsh on it. And then my next one was a 15-inch MacBook Pro. That's actually what I got started tech writing with. It didn't last that long. It lasted like 2 or 3 years. But then again, I was using it pretty heavily, and I have some sentimental attachment because that's what I started this career with. And now I have this 2016 MacBook Pro, which I'm kind of meh on. I mean, I don't use it every day. It's my backup / testing Mac. So speaking of which, I should probably work on getting this GM installed. But David says he's going to wait a few hours after initial release. Oh yeah, there's that bug they had a few years ago. It was breaking devices. Yeah, I remember having to warn people about that. I went onto the Tidbits Talk mailing list. It was like, don't install it. And then, of course, there was no way to delete that. So like hours later, people were like, oh, it's fine now. I'm like, yeah, I know it's fine now. I didn't want the barrage of messages about people complaining about their brick devices. I'd rather have a little egg in my face and have to deal with all of that. It's no good. Oh, you know what's interesting? I just realized I thought I was going to install the Mojave GM today, but it's not a GM. It's beta 11. Mojave is not GM yet. I guess that'll be in the next few days. I might wait on that then. I did install the tvOS 12 GM this morning, and I have absolutely nothing to report on it. It's not the least bit interesting. I tried to do the password autofill on a couple apps, and just isn't working. So I don't know if the apps have to support it or something just ain't tuned up right or what. I don't know what the deal is. But it seems tied into the feature when you select a text field and you get the notification on your phone and you can type into that notification. But I've never gotten that to work very well either. Because like if you've already entered text on the screen, you can't delete it from that field like you can. Now it works flawlessly with the Apple TV remote. Like you pull up the keyboard and that it interacts flawlessly. But there's some kind of weird sync thing going on with the notification feature. I find it very confusing. All this stuff should be integrated into the app or something. There shouldn't be like, because you have 3 different iOS to Apple TV interfaces. You have the app that you can download from the App Store. You have the Control Center button, which is my personal preference because it's just always right there and it's pre-installed. One thing, apparently in tvOS 12, if you don't have that installed or set up on your iPhone already, it will set that up for you. And then Oh, what was the other one? Oh yeah, and then of course the notification thing. So I find that very confusing. Apple says, I'm sorry, Michael says, although tvOS 12 doesn't seem like a huge update, I think a couple of app developers are waiting for it before releasing stuff. For example, my cable provider. Who is your cable provider again, Michael? Are you on Charter? Yeah, I know that's planned, and they have that in the iOS. In the tvOS 12 release notes. I think Charter is going to have like a cable box app for the Apple TV, and that's kind of the big news of the Apple TV is Apple is finally getting into replacing the cable box. They're sort of like, and this is what I've predicted for a while for the direction of the Apple TV is just as he's with Spectrum, okay, just as when Apple first got going with the iPhone, the partner was Singular, now AT&T, to distribute iPhones. They're now doing the same thing with cable companies, which for the short term, I think is a pretty smart move because I can't see much reason for the average person these days to buy one of these boxes. I just got a TCL Roku TV, and the built-in software is great. Like most of this built-in software is horrible, but the Roku stuff's really good. And I don't think I have my Apple TV hooked up to that TV right now. There's no reason to. But now, if you have it as a replacement for a cable box, I think that's a win-win for everybody because like those old Motorola cable boxes are horrible. It's like something from the 80s. And Apple TV is a much better experience, even with the terrible remote. Although I do love that. I do love the old Comcast, like the big silver remote that you could, hammer in nails with. Michael says Los Angeles, where he lives around, is one of the initial markets for the app. Well, that's very cool. You're going to have to write about that. Because I can't test it. Spectrum isn't around here. It's and I can't even get Comcast anymore. I'm outside the Comcast area. My only TV provider here, my only good. I hope you do. My only TV provider here. I mean, I can get DirecTV or Dish, of course, but North Central Telephone Cooperative, our local telco. I can get cable service from them. It's all right. The problem I had with it, it's all over IP. It's IPTV, and my house is kind of weird, and so they didn't want to run a line to my TV room because it's like literally an underground bunker. And so first they gave me these weird wireless connector boxes. That didn't work. Like every time somebody connected to the 5G network in the TV room, it shorted it out. It started going wonky. And so I wrote about these broadband network over power line boxes I got. Those work better, but they still, every day or so, they would flake out and I have to unplug them and replug them back in. It's just really inconvenient. I just found it easier to use something like YouTube TV, one of those internet-based services. Yeah, Michael suggests that maybe launching first in Los Angeles because there are a few entertainment people in the area. That seems likely. There's probably some executives, either Spectrum or Apple is wanting to impress. So that would make sense. I mean, it makes sense to launch it first in Los Angeles, New York, maybe the Bay Area, and then move in to other places later. I think it's a great development. I mean, for the people still on cable and satellite or whatever. I guess everyone really went with satellite that well, but with cable, yeah. And they're also doing a thing in tvOS 12 where they're calling it zero sign-in or zero sign-on. And so it can automatically detect your cable provider and authenticate those apps without you having to log into anything. And it can also, I think it can also automatically install your cable provider's app, if that's a thing. It'd be cool too, and maybe it does this. Again, it's a hard thing for me to test, but if it could automatically install the apps you have access to and just have them there, like a channel lineup. If that's not a thing now, it needs to be, because that would be pretty great. Though I'm not sure most people want to have to surf through apps to watch TV. I think a lot of people just like flipping around channels. I mean, maybe younger people, people my age or younger. I don't know, but my father-in-law watches more TV than anyone I know, and he loves the channel guides. He loves flipping around. The app thing just ain't his cup of tea. Yeah, but not a ton exciting about tvOS 12. Right now, we do not have plans to update the Take Control of Apple TV book because everything that's in there now, as far as I know, is still up to date. Truth be told, and I've mentioned this to my publisher a few times, I'd really just like to scrap the book and just redo it because um, I feel like it's outdated. Not in terms of like what works. All the stuff in there works, but I think like conceptually, some of the ideas I had back in 2013, 2014 are just kind of out of date. Like I have a lot of stuff about ripping DVDs and Blu-rays. Although I just recently heard about a customer in Canada losing a lot of his iTunes content. Like, I don't know, I guess the distributor decided they didn't want to work with Apple anymore. His movies vanished from his library, and Apple's kind of like, well, sorry, here's some rental credits. So I don't know. Maybe that's more up to date than I thought. Maybe people do, want to rip their DVDs and Blu-rays and such. I think for the most more trouble than it's worth, but there's definitely some advantages to it. It just takes a really long time and a lot of disk space. Michael says it's not so hard to say open Netflix or open TCM with the Siri remote, and that's very true. And one thing I will give tvOS above all these other platforms is the search, especially voice search, is superior. Even over, you think Android TV, you think Google would nail that, but no, Apple has done a much better job on the content search. The problem is you don't always necessarily know exactly what you want to do, right? Like, even if I want to look at Netflix. Here's the problem for a lot of people. A lot of people, they can sit down on their TV and they say, I want to watch something funny. They don't want to have to look at, this is Netflix, this is Hulu, this is, what the hell is all this? They just want to watch like Three's Company, where's that at? And the TV app tries to solve that, and with some amount of success, but the big problem with the TV app is they don't have Netflix support. And without Netflix, I think that really holds it back. And even then, the value of the app is questionable. Michael says he uses the Siri remote much more now that he's become used to bossing his HomePod around via Siri. Can you control, I think this is a no, but can you control the Apple TV from a HomePod? Because one of the things I really like about Google Home, I'm not just crazy about any of these voice assistants, but one of the things I really like is that if you have a Chromecast Ultra plugged in your TV, you can launch all kinds of content from a Google Home. You can do that from Netflix, YouTube, Google Play TV. Okay, so HomePod cannot control Apple TV as far as he knows. And I don't know that either. I don't think it can either. If that changes, I might have to buy a HomePod. But for right now, and my kid loves it when I can say, I can tell Google to play Pacific Rim. That's his favorite movie, or play PJ Masks or whoever he wants to watch. That. And it's just handy too. It's nice when I'm laying in bed at 6 o'clock in the morning. He's up and at him and wants to watch Pacific Rim, and I don't want to get out of bed. I can just tell Google, play it on the TV, and it'll turn the TV on and everything. It's a really great feature. I don't know why Apple hasn't copied it. And unfortunately, I don't even AirPlay too. I don't think it's as good as Chromecast, at least in some ways. The one nice thing about AirPlay, I think it works a lot better for if you're streaming something from a device to the TV. Like screen mirroring and stuff on Chromecast just kind of sucks. But now, like the main function of Chromecast, of course, the way it works is it sends a URL to a receiver, and then the receiver loads the content, downloads it from the web, and streams it and plays it. So it's kind of brilliant in that regard, because it doesn't matter what you do with your phone. You could leave the country and wherever you started on your phone is still playing through Chromecast. And so for stuff like that, it works a lot better. Apple kind of copied that with, there's a feature, I think it's turned on by default now, but if you AirPlay something from the iTunes store, from your iPhone to the Apple TV, it will do that. It will, like, the Apple TV will load that directly from the cloud. But it only works with Apple content. It only works with iTunes content. So, like, it doesn't do that with, like, Netflix or YouTube or whatever. And see, Chromecast, it works like that with all those. Like if you load something from Netflix, it's actually the Chromecast itself streaming that, and your phone just gave it the command. So I wish AirPlay worked a little more like that, but I mean, it works a lot better than it did. You know, like there's a few apps I've been streaming video from to the Apple TV now, and then I can put it to sleep, I put it in my pocket, and it still works fine on the Apple TV. It used to not be the case. It used to be you'd have to keep the device that you're streaming from awake. Don't don't turn the screen off. Don't put the smart cover on the iPad. Just leave it there. Plug it in. It works a lot better now, but in some cases not as well as Chromecast. Chromecast has its quirks too. Like for instance, most TVs have a built-in Chromecast receiver because it's built on. I think it's built on a DLNA standard. I think I'm getting that right. And so a lot of them just sort of or almost accidental Chromecast receivers. But there are certain apps that don't work well with that. Like Netflix is kind of finicky. So I had to buy the Chromecast Ultra and connect it to the TV, and that works with everything. So yeah. And with HDMI CEC and automatically switching inputs, it's fine. I keep it hooked up all the time. But I almost never directly interact with the Chromecast Ultra. If I'm going to watch something from Netflix, I sit down on my TV and say I'm going to watch something. I open the Netflix app on a Roku, on the built-in Roku TV, and watch it from there. But Chromecast, I use almost exclusively with voice. Just because I don't care for, I don't know, it seems weird to me. It just seems weird to start playing something on your phone and then cast it to the TV. I'd much rather launch it from the TV. I still don't think they have the whole interface thing cracked, the whole TV interface thing. Apple and Roku, I think, are farther ahead than most, but it's still kind of weird. But it's just a hard thing to program for. I mean, how do you make a friendly interface like that? I mean, it's easy on a phone, right? You have it right there in your hand. You have your thumbs right there. TV, there's like 8 feet of distance probably. You have remote control. I mean, I think Google probably has the best idea with the Chromecast because then you're not actually interfacing with the TV. But even then, it's still kind of funky, still kind of clunky. So maybe someone will crack that nut one day. Apparently, Steve Jobs did, but he didn't stick around to implement it. So we'll never know. We'll never know. The guy on Twitter, Scott on Twitter, said, all people want from a watch is fashion, fitness tracking, and notifications. Apple's going to throw on health gimmicks to try and justify the high price, but really what we want to have a watch isn't going to change. I don't know, is that true? Is that really all we can do? Because, sir, my problem with this Apple Watch, as cool as the tech is. All right, thanks for sticking around, Michael. I'll probably wrap this up here in a minute before I get too rambly. Not getting a ton of takers today, which is fine. I'm just experimenting to see when people like watching this stuff, if they like watching it at all. My beard may be scaring people away. I'm going to have to trim that, to cut that down. I don't know. I think the Apple Watch could be a lot better than what it is. I mean, you're spending the one you really want to get nowadays is the GPS and cellular. That's a $500 watch. I'm spending $500 on something. I want a little. I mean, the original iPad was $500, and even then people said it was too expensive. And so, how much? Where are you gonna have a watch? You can get a fitness tracker. It looks kind of nice, but I could buy a much nicer watch for $500. I mean, traditional watch, and it would tell time better because the screen would always be on. And I could buy, a pretty good fitness tracker. And you can get those for $30 or less. I mean, you got the Z bands, the Z, Xiaomi, some kind of Chinese deal. Pretty good fitness trackers. Sync up with Apple Health. You're not really missing anything other than the activity rings. I mean, the Apple Watch. The Apple Watch is basically Apple's it's been a long-term R&D project. They've gotten a lot of cool technology out of it, like Force Touch, the Haptic stuff. I think that's probably the biggest thing they've gotten out of it. They've certainly learned a lot about making sensors and chips. But then if you look at what Apple's actually developed, okay, the Touch Bar. Well, no one really cares about Touch Bar. 3D Touch. 3D Touch is looking like it was kind of a dud. Although, the taptic feedback's been a great success. So, yeah, I don't know. I mean, I'm sure they've made money from Apple Watch. I mean, that's really what matters, right? But, and I know a lot of people swear it saved their life because they've got some weird heart condition or something, which is great. But, I don't know. I'm just not feeling the Apple Watch. Some people swear by it though. I think it's one of those things. If you got the spare money, cool. I ain't gonna hate on you for it. I don't think it's a bad product, but it's kind of a niche product. Now there are a couple of women in my family who have atrial fibrillation or a history of it, and so I'll probably get Apple Watches for them to track that stuff. David says, getting notifications on my wrist is a huge plus. Reduces my anxiety. Wondering what that buzz in my pocket was. See, my problem is, though, that I get anxiety wondering why my wrist is buzzing. And I've literally been at like dinners. Like I'll be on a date with my wife, and there's a big group chat getting started in the Tidbit Slack, and starts ringing my wrist off the hook, and I've had to rip my watch off and just toss it aside somewhere. Because it just drives me crazy, and you can't ignore them when they're on your wrist. If it's in your pocket, you can silence it. You can mute it. Harder to do on your wrist. I went through and tweak. I can never seem to get the notifications for the watch tweaked just right. I keep getting stuff I don't really want. And there's not that many notifications that are all that important to me. Like phone calls, I don't even answer phone calls because most of them are junk. Text messages. Most of them are emergencies. Most of them, I can get to in the next hour or two, and no one's going to die. Work stuff, yeah, but then a lot of our work chat happens in Slack, and then if people just start going off on stuff, which is great. I mean, it's great to have discussions, but I don't need notification for every single one. Now the one Apple Watch app I loved and I do miss is what's it called? Carrot Weather, which is a great weather app. Highly recommend it. I use it every day. David says he had a Pebble, and so that taught him how to train his notifications for the Apple Watch. I never had a Pebble. I thought about getting one, but I don't know. I had friends with them. I was just never impressed. David wants to know what is good about Carrot Weather. Well, I'll tell you. Well, I wrote a review on Tidbits. I'll go ahead and link that, but I will answer the question here. Well, first of all, it's just a really good app. It's well designed. So for those that don't know, Carrot, there's this developer, Brian. I can't think of his last name off the top of my head, but he's been making these Carrot apps for a few years. And the gimmick behind the apps is that they're powered by this evil artificial intelligence that wants to kill all humans or whatever. If you've ever played the Portal games with GLaDOS, it's basically a ripoff of GLaDOS, if I'm just being honest. But, Valve, the developer of those games, isn't doing anything with it. So, it's not a knock against the apps. So anyway, he's got these different Carrot apps. Well, Carrot Weather kind of has that same conceit. So when you open it up, it'll say something kind of snarky to you. You can configure that any way you want. And give it different political readings. You can give it different language levels. I mean, it'll straight up cuss if you want it to. But that's not really what I think's great about it. What's great about it is it draws from a lot of different sources. Like the base app can draw from Dark Sky, and you can buy different subscriptions for it. Now the subscriptions get kind of expensive, but I have the highest tier, so I get my data source from AccuWeather, which I think is no, I'm sorry, not AccuWeather, Weather Underground. which is probably the most accurate weather service. Dark Sky used to be really good, but something changed at some point, and it stopped being as accurate as it was. Although it's still a pretty good weather app itself, but I'd rather have Weather Underground. And it's really good about alerting you about bad weather. Like if there's a tornado, there's a thunderstorm, whatever. Carrot Weather gives me notifications for that, which is really why I want to have a weather app. I mean, there's a few things I want to have a weather app. I want to tell me when the weather's bad and like about to get really bad and I need to take shelter. And there's a lot of apps that do that, but they don't know when to shut up. Like I can't think of the app off the top of my head, but like Dark Sky can do this. Dark Sky will give you like, oh, it's bad air advisory. Okay, great. I don't care that much. I mean, it's not. I mean, usually if you have bad air, you know about it. For instance, if you're up in Seattle, I don't know if those fires are still going on, but the air quality is really bad there for all. You didn't need an app to tell you that. If there's a tornado in the area or a possibility tornado, I need an app to tell me that because I can't predict that off the top of my head, and I'm not watching TV all the time. I like the layout. It gives you up here. It does take a minute to load. It's one thing I don't like about it. So yeah, I have like a 7-day weather forecast. It tends to be very accurate. It also gives you a breakdown of like when it's supposed to rain. Like it will tell you before it starts raining, just like Dark Sky will. And you can look at the daily chart and it'll say, like, for instance, today around 4 o'clock, it's going to be raining. So it helps me plan my day out. It also tells me in the app when the sun's going to set. So like I need to mow. Probably not going to be able to do it today because it's going to rain. But see, now I can look and it's not supposed to rain tomorrow. Let's see. Yeah, Friday, partly cloudy till afternoon, humid throughout the day. Okay, so let's say we're going to mow on Friday instead. Friday. At 7 a.m., it's going to be 67. It's going to be around 80 degrees at 11 a.m. later in the morning. And it's not going to cool down until night. So it's not going to rain at all. So see, just from all that information, I can tell, okay, I probably want to try to mow in the morning if it's not too dewy, if the ground isn't too wet. So, accuracy of information, notifications, hour by hour breakdowns of everything I need. Those are all the reasons I like Carrot Weather. And I like the sense of humor. Brian Mueller, that's the guy's name. He's a good guy. I like his apps. I've been following him for a long time. He started making these about the same time I got into tech writing as a profession. So I've always been kind of partial to him. But, I've tried the other Carrot apps and, they're pretty good. But no, I think Carrot Weather is like the best one. I mean, it's really like the ultimate one out of the collection. It shows how much he's developed as a developer. Okay. The hour's about up. So go to just have one last thing here. Going back to Pebble, David says, absolute best thing about the Pebble, physical buttons for play pause. Meant I can manipulate songs when driving without looking away from the road. Yeah, and that's something I wish Apple Watch had. More physical buttons, or if not physical buttons, at least some kind of better, haptic feedback. One thing Apple is really good at is making these kind of virtual buttons, like virtual trackpad clicks and things like that. And, could use more of that kind of stuff. One thing I do find exciting about the Apple Watch Series 4 is they're talking about haptic feedback for the digital crown. I love the digital crown. I love manipulating stuff with the digital crown, like adjusting volume. Or it's really cool if you have HomeKit is, if you have like lights that you can dim those with the digital crown, which is really awesome. I'd love to have some kind of haptic feedback for that. You already have the springy feel. You get to the top and it springs back. You can kind of feel that in the crown. So I guess that's going to get better with this watch. So And I do love that physical response. So yeah, I definitely could go for more physical buttons in the Apple Watch, but of course I don't think. In fact, if Series 5 Apple replaced the digital crown completely with something digital with haptic feedback, I wouldn't be the least bit surprised. I'd be a little disappointed because I think that sort of physical feedback is tremendous, but you know, Apple doesn't always care what we want. All right, well, thanks for everyone who stopped in. Hopefully you learned something. After the stream, if you have questions, just leave me a comment. I'll try to respond to it. Of course, you can always read my work at tidbits.com, and you can leave comments there. If you go to talk.tidbits.com, I try to read everything there as often as I can. I'm on Twitter at jcenters, JCENTERS, and always willing to answer questions there whenever I get them. And finally, if you want to learn more about iOS 12, I have a book. If you go to takecontrolbooks.com, Take Control of iOS 12, now on the virtual shelves. That's a brand new title. And a couple of older ones, Take Control of Apple TV, which is still current. We're still updating that when we can. And from earlier this year, Take Control of Apple Home Automation, which is a title I'm especially proud of. And it will answer all the questions you have. If you ever wondered about HomeKit, about, setting up like smart lights, smart locks, etc., I show you all that stuff. I show you the wiring. I show you the, the hardware installed, everything. I mean, what they call soup to nuts. It's all there for you. So check out those books on takecontrolbooks.com and join me next time wherever I decide to stream again. We're right now I'm just kind of experimenting. I'm seeing when the best times are. I think my next one will probably be later in an afternoon, or maybe even on the weekend. Just experimenting here, just seeing when people want to tune in. And but once I start figuring out a good time for that, I'll start letting people know, posting that schedule. All right. Thanks. Have a good day and happy computing.